Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Puppet Time Online, brought to you by the Puppet Kitchen. I'm your host, Eric Wright. As always, Puppet Time Online is your chance to sit down with some of the puppetry community's finest and me to hear about what they know about. As usual, I also have Katie with me on the computer over here.
On the laugh track.
She always laughs at my stupid jokes, which is great. She's going to be watching your questions and comments. So if you have questions, comments, or anything for me or my guest today, put them in the chat section, which we're on YouTube Live, which I think is down here, and Facebook Live, which I think is over here, and Twitch, which I think is also over here. So put them in there, she'll catch them, and we'll make sure that we get to everybody today. I'm so excited for today's guest.
Woo-hoo.
A veritable pillar of the puppetry community. And certainly of the New York art scene. He's an award-winning designer, director, puppeteer, third-generation puppeteer, as a matter of fact.
Ooh.
And
I'm going to pretend like I'm a DJ on a radio show, and I'm just going to keep hitting sound effects.
Just going to bring the air horn in.
Totally fine.
It's Basil Twist!
Here, I'll just bring him in.
Hi!
Hi! Hi, Eric. Hello.
It's so nice to see you.
Is my sound on?
Your sound is on. You sound great.
Yes.
It's been a while. I had the great pleasure of working with you on several projects of yours, including
great
Petrushka.
pleasure of working with you.
Stop it. I also got to say, I'll just get it right out of the way at first. I subbed for you in your role in Peter and Wendy, the Mabou Mines production of Peter and Wendy, and I'll never forget. We met up at a party or something that you were throwing, and you were like, "Hey, how would you like to do this show that I can't do, and you'll take over my role?" And I was just a little pup, and I was totally floored, and it was definitely one of my favorite shows that I've ever been a part of, and so it's been hugely impactful, and I got to thank you for that right off of the bat. So it's been great. Oh no, is he frozen?
Your gratitude stunned him. Oh no.
Oh no.
We'll see if he unfreezes.
Well, we're having some technical difficulties while Basil just remains stunned with my gratitude. But I will say, just to name some other things that Basil's been a part of, he did this amazing show called Arias with a Twist with Joey Arias. He designed puppets for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory on Broadway, Addams Family on Broadway. He was part of Paul Vogel's Long Christmas Ride Home, and numerous other productions around the world, around the country. I mean, this guy really does so much. And now, we're having connection issues. So, what happens to the best of us is what I mean to say.
Basil's also one of our relationship stories.
That's right. Basil is one of our relatives. There, he's back.
Yay!
Oh, the story is, I'm in California and I'm in a car because there was a power outage, but it seems like the power just came on. Did the power just come on? Yes. Okay, well, cool. But I'm back in here with you.
You're back
now. So we were talking about Peter and Wendy, and just got a shout out to the memory of the late great Lee Brewer, who directed and wrote that piece.
Yes, who just passed away, and who we all miss, and who was so influential to so many people, including you and I. And that was really one of my favorite experiences that I've been a part of. It was such a great show. And Katie and I were just saying that also you're involved in one of our relationship benchmarks, because Symphonie Fantastique was our second date. Going to see
awesome.
Symphonie Fantastique was our second date. which was like 16 years ago.
You came to see it was that 2003 when we remounted it at Dodger Stages?
That's right. Yeah, Dodger Stages, which is now New World Stages. Way back in the day.
Way back in the day.
And it's such a beautiful show. It's such a gorgeous show. It's such a great take on puppetry. For those of you who are not familiar, it's an abstract puppetry show, which I think is just a brilliant idea. It's also, in addition to being incredible for that reason, it's performed in a giant tank of water. And it's all lights and sound and bubbles and pieces of fabric manipulated in the water. It's really fantastic. I really like that show.
I have a film that I released of it, which is available for streaming on Vimeo on demand. It's on my website, and it's also Vimeo on demand. And it's pretty cool because I have a lot of backstage footage too, so you see how it's done backstage, kind of folded into the backstage. And it's my first kind of real film I made that's like a full. I mean, it started as a puppet show, but I made a film of it. It's not just a video document of a show. It's a film. I think it's cool. Yeah,
that's really neat. I'll have to check that out.
Please.
Before we talk too much about all of your work, because I want to get into that, we always start questions on this show with how you got into puppetry. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I got into puppetry because I grew up in San Francisco. It's where I am right now, and I'm at my parents' house. And I got into puppetry because of my mom. My mom was in a sort of amateur puppetry group, the Bay Area or the San Francisco Puppetry Guild.
Nice.
And so she was doing puppet shows with a bunch of other moms, and they would do. They would go to hospitals and do birthday parties, and I was totally into it. I'm also super, I'm born in '69, so Sesame Street, started in 1970, so I was like totally squarely like the generation for that show. So of course I loved the Muppets on Sesame Street. And but I guess it really started from my mom. Yeah. And it's actually is a family thing because my mother's father was a musician. He was a big band leader in the 30s and 40s, but he used puppets as part of his act. Yeah. So he was also a puppeteer. That's where the third generation puppeteer thing comes from. Yeah. Neither of them were really full-time puppeteers. They were that was like a bonus thing that they did. My mom doesn't puppeteer at all anymore, and my grandfather, he died before I was born. But I like to say it's in my blood.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about working your mom into one of your shows? Just getting a little bit of puppetry. It's kind of amazing. It's great coming from a long.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. I'm just saying.
I'll talk.
A good puppeteer is a good puppeteer for life. So my follow-up question to that now is now that we know how you got into puppetry, what keeps you in puppetry?
What keeps me in puppetry? Well, I don't really have any other skills.
You wouldn't be the first person to say that.
I could maybe drive an Uber car or something, but I don't have any other skills. So I don't know. I love it. I have a super charmed life. I have, I love puppeteers. I love, I know people all over the world. I get to do neat projects. I love live theater. It's hard right now, but I love all the, the different entry points that I get to be a designer and a performer and work on big scale and little scale. And so I don't know, puppetry keeps working for me. So
yeah, I mean,
so
you've
that's
certainly
good
got a good
because I don't have
handle
any
on it.
other skill.
You do so many incredible, like incredibly different productions, which I think is really great. You get a lot of, I mean, you're doing a lot of large scale, like, you know, doing puppets for productions on Broadway and operas and dance pieces and, you know, like you're saying, big scale, little scale, all over the world. And you definitely have like a style, like you can definitely tell, like that's a Basil Twist design. It's a really great aesthetic that's full of movement and full of color and texture, which I think is really cool. But what I also love is that it spans a lot of different productions and spans a lot of different styles, which I think is really neat to see. Because,
yeah,
you know,
I tried to, like, early on in my career, like, so when I first did Symphonie Fantastique and I made this splash with Symphonie Fantastique and this abstract puppet show, and then the next, you know, the next big piece I did was Petrushka. So I wanted to do something totally different
yeah,
that was super figurative and super rigorous, you know, manipulation technique. And
yeah,
so I've tried to kind of do different, you know, have each show be super different, and not stick to a same technique or style.
mm-hmm.
And then nonetheless, now I've been working for a long time, so I know that somewhere in there's a kind of unified style.
Sure.
But I do try and you know, mix it up a lot.
Yeah. Is there like any criteria that you look for in a new production or in the projects that you decide to take on? Is there something that you've noticed speaks to you about the productions that you choose to work on, whether consciously or unconsciously?
Well, there's different kinds of productions. So I have productions that I make or that I sort of drive, and then there's things that I get involved in, or there's things that people ask me to do. Like, I just had this totally mind-blowing experience that I just did this opera in France during this pandemic. I can't believe that happened. And
yeah,
but like when they asked me to do it, I'm like, okay, but why me? You know, what can I bring to this? What can I bring to this that's puppetry, or that's, you know, special stage crafty,
sure,
live performance, fantastical? How can I, you know, I'm not just going to do any normal play or opera. It has to have something that, you know, that puts demands on my craft.
sure,
And there has to be a sort of a reason for it. If I'm making a show from the ground up, the reason, like the cool puppet thing, is the reason for the whole show, and I'll build the show around it.
That's cool. What was so Arias with a Twist is one of those shows that you built from the ground up, right?
Arias with a Twist was also one thing that was specific about that show. Was it was about the space. So a lot of times the space will inspire me and how I'm going to work. So that space is the Dorothy B. Williams Theater, which is the smaller downstairs theater at the Here Art Center, and that's where I premiered Symphonie Fantastique, and that's where I mostly run the Dream Music Puppetry program out of, although sometimes we do stuff upstairs in the bigger theater. And it's named after my grandmother, and my grandfather's puppets are on display outside of that theater.
Yeah, they're great.
And what happened was for Arias with a Twist, it was the 10th anniversary of the theater, and we had a cancellation, and the building was being renovated and it was about to reopen, and I was like, oh shit, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And my friend Joey Arias had been in a Cirque du Soleil show in Las Vegas and was just coming back to New York. And we had always wanted to work together. So I just said, let's make a big Las Vegas extravaganza in this tiny postage stamp little theater and do it up. And that was like enough of the why of the show to then just be like, oh, when then she's abducted by aliens. And there she goes to hell. And,
yeah, exactly.
Has a mushroom trip, and we just made it up. But it was about the space, and the space is small and intimate, and I feel it is well suited to puppetry because of that. Of course, we made this kind of like giant show to sort of show off how the insanity of doing something in such a small space.
Yeah. Did that change because you moved Artists with a Twist, like it was wildly popular, and you moved that show to the Abrams Art Center as well, right?
Yeah, it changed when we did it there. I prefer it at the Dorothy B.
Yeah.
I mean, when we did it at Abrams, it was fun because I love that theater, and it has a fly space, and and so you can use the fly space, which is something that's super fun. And there's also it's not like a union house, and you can't you can do the flies yourself and everything. So it's like a giant puppet stage that you can play with. But the show then became, we just had to like kind of make it bigger to fit the space. And I actually, and although that gave the possibility of the show to tour, because it was not really a touring production when it was so tiny, although we did tour it some, there was hope, there's always hope that it was going to be more a viable touring option because we made the bigger production, and that for different reasons it went to DC. And then that was the end of the lineup for that show. But I loved the craziness of the show. I love it in the little space. Like I love being in the space and being like, where's all this stuff coming from? Like that's
definitely
that is something that you can't capture on film, that you have to be in the room to have that kind of like thrill.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a clown car, just like stuff coming out of like, and I knew that space. I had been in that space many times, and it really was surprising to me, just like there was a lot packed into there, and rightfully so. I mean, Joey is such a huge personality that like you have to match that, and I feel like that was really like that was a great matchup of that. Certainly not the only like collaboration you've done. I'm really curious about like how you approach collaboration and what you feel like makes for an effective collaboration in your work.
Well, I feel like my most, besides that work with Joey, I did a lot of work with Lee, and so with Lee Brewer, and I that's sort of for me a model of collaboration. And I don't know. I got a lot of people. I collaborate with people sometimes because they ask me, "Hey, we need to have a tidal wave on stage, and a tornado, and then everything needs to, some impassable thing that I have to figure out for them."
Yeah.
And it's not so much a collaboration as I'm just like I have an assignment and I'm trying to figure it out. And with Lee, there was, because he knew me as an artist, he would get an idea inspired by something he saw of mine. I mean, he was also a total, you know, he would steal ideas too. And he would like just like appropriate them. So for example, he saw Symphonie Fantastique and he's like, you know, I've always wanted to do this play of mine like that, but I want to do it huge. So I want to do it in a 1,000,000-gallon tank of water. This was and I was like, that's not gonna work. But we could do it with silk and we could have the same sort of fluid effects, and that became this piece called Red Beads. And it was just kind of him you know, taking my ideas as an artist and just melding them to his, and just I don't know, there was something about my relationship with Lee where I could help make his most insane ideas possible, and protect them.
Yeah. Did it work the other way too? Like, do you find that you sort of melded his ideas into yours, or you stole things from him as well and like influenced your work in that way as well?
I mean, definitely. I mean, he had the ideas, you know, he had the idea, he would have the idea to do something that was like in the case of Red Beads, he would have the idea he wanted to make this entire floating fluid world that he saw as underwater, but it eventually became silk in the air. But that was his, he saw that world that way. And I don't know, he always wanted you know, puppetry touches. He wanted to give puppetry, you know, he wanted like a moment of great puppetry. He would just be like, I need a moment of great puppetry here. That's would just be like, and it's like, okay, we'll figure that out. Is this great enough? You know? So he would give you the chance to do stuff. He gave a lot of room to all his collaborators, to all his performers to kind of to go there.
Yeah. That's really cool. Okay, do you want to jump in with a question?
Yeah, we had a question from a viewer who's in Africa. Oh,
cool. Oh, yeah, asking if there are recordings of Artists with a Twist from Peter Court. Yeah, it's a good question.
There is. It's really frustrating. There is a recording of the show actually at the Library of Performing Arts. And
at Lincoln Center.
And then there was a documentary made about the film, about the show, that has a lot of footage from the show, but it's not the entire show. It has a lot of it, but it's pretty great. It has a lot of interviews with a lot of Joey's collaborators, my collaborators, and Leah's in it, and he's talking, and it shows kind of the sort of the genesis of that collaboration. But I don't have, you know, besides just like a fixed video of the show, I don't have I wish.
Right. Well, it's so hard, especially like you're saying, like, especially for Artists with a Twist, like it's totally different to be in the space and experience the show all around you. And it just doesn't quite translate. Not even for like Lincoln Center, which always gets great archived recordings, and for a documentary that's about it, like it just isn't the same. Yeah, did you want to check?
What's the name of the documentary that was made about the
the documentary is called Artists with a Twist, the docu-fantasy.
That's right.
And I don't know if it ever is. There was a moment where it was like being available for streaming or something.
Okay, we'll look into that. We'll look into that and see, and maybe send a link out or something.
There's definitely lots of clips online of it, and there's lots of great like bootleg footage that
it's
people
available on Amazon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
great.
You get it on Amazon. Artists with a Twist, the docu-fantasy.
Love it.
There's also a lot of great like bootleg footage of like people like sitting in the front row with their phone in their lap, like filming like Joey's appearance to Led Zeppelin in the spaceship. And those are always those are cool. There's a lot of stuff like that online.
Yeah. Yeah. We had another question come in from earlier from one of our Instagram followers that I think is really great. It's about when you're working on a project like Artists with a Twist, you're kind of generating it from something new. You can kind of create whatever is your fancy. When you're working on a project like Addams Family or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you're working with established characters, established IP. Like, how do you find that balance between what the audience knows in the source material and the new like aesthetic needs in the production and what you want to bring to it?
I'm back. Am I here?
You are. You never left from our side.
Can you hear me?
I asked a very great question, but that's okay. I'm interested in. This is from one of our Instagram followers.
Can you hear me now?
Juggler. Yeah. Wait. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Because I can hear you just fine, but you can't hear me. Okay. Let's see if we can.
But you know what happened is someone called my phone. So now that my power's on,
yeah.
Give me 30 seconds.
Do you want to go out
I'm
and
gonna
then
hop
come
on my
back in
laptop.
again? Yeah. You want to go out and come back in again, and I'll just vamp.
2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. You got it.
I think he was holding up 3 fingers, but they were one.
2 minutes. I'll be right back.
The ever-ending Matic Basil Twist, everyone. He's so mercurial, and
He's always on the go.
He's always on the go. Clearly, calls from his car. Maybe practicing for his second career as an Uber driver. Which, honestly, if he wanted
Not
to,
in this economy. Might be one of the few things less lucrative than puppetry. No one's getting in an Uber.
It is a good question that our Instagram follower Phineas Juggler posed, which is about about translating existing material onto stage, making it new and making it something personal. So I'm excited to hear about.
You have a little bit of experience doing that.
I do have a little bit of experience doing that.
Why don't you tell us about that, Eric, while you're vamping along?
Well, actually, I will say, because I asked the same question of the folks that worked on Little Shop for the new off-Broadway production, and the response was like, don't make what was, make what people remember, especially with Little Shop, which is that like there's so many basically copies of that original, like Martin Robinson's original design for the puppets. But if you actually go back and look, the puppets are like they're better as a memory than like they were made on a low budget. Like they were pretty scrapped together. They're beautiful puppets and incredibly designed. But like when you look at them up close, they're kind of scrapped together. And for this production, it needed to be really shiny up close and far away. And like, oh look, Basil's back.
Hi, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Your audio is going to be a little funny for a second while StreamYard catches up. And I was talking about this question that we got from one of our followers, which was, how do you reconcile working on existing intellectual property like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Addams Family, where the audience is coming in with expectations on the characters or the look of the show, and balancing that with what you want to do and what the new aesthetic needs of the production are, and like how you can make it new and fresh and personal.
It's when in those like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Addams Family, when you go into an environment like that where people are not prepared for puppetry, they think that you're going to just come in and solve they have this huge problem and they don't know how to do it. You actually you have to, I mean, it's in those cases more than it being about the brand and staying true to the brand or something, because that's ultimately there's this huge collaborative team, and in terms of the aesthetics and stuff of like what the Oompa Loompas are going to look like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that you kind of in that project there was a costume. He was the costume and set designer, Mark Thompson, so he was very opinionated about that.
Sure.
And what you mostly just needed to do was make that it worked. Like that it works and that it's going to be simple for people. Those are two projects where sometimes I feel a little like I was not, I worked with not puppeteers, but with gypsy Broadway dancer types. And so you have to make it be intuitive, simple, easy, and it better be fun, or people are not, they're going to hate that part of the show. Everyone will hate it. So it's really important that it be fun and it be intuitive and it, you know, like those
Here's some giant tentacles.
Those giant tentacles that was like these like Broadway gypsies who were operating those.
Sure.
And so they needed to get in, you needed to get them into it. That was, you know, maybe not as fun necessarily as the Oompa Loompas were in the, of which there are no pictures because they still don't allow the Oompa Loompas to be photographed. But the Oompa Loompas were basically humanettes that, you know, the performers were on their knees and they had these puppet bodies with their heads. And it had to be fun. They had to see in a mirror. It was really important that they could see in a mirror what they were doing and how fabulous it was. Like
you're saying the performers had to see.
The performers had to see. They not on stage, but immediately when you were in the rehearsal room, for example, I had to make sure everybody, you know, it's always like the director and there's all these people on their phones, and you have to get all those people to move out of the way so that the performers can see in the mirror really what they're doing, because they don't know the effect that they have. And when they see it, then they're all like, you know, because they're all like, they were in, you know, whatever, they were in different shows together. So like, let's do the choreography from Chicago. And they like do it with their Oompa Loompa. Then it becomes fun. So that is a unique thing where you're bringing in puppetry to a bunch of total outsiders. It's pretty rare that you have someone who's like, yeah, I use puppets a little, but most people don't. And so you just have to make it be, easy and fun. That's the most important thing in a project like that. And then staying true to the brand and stuff is you know, is key in working with the other designers.
It's sort of a group effort on that front. That's really fascinating. I never really thought about that way, but definitely, like, you know, the importance of being able to play with the puppet, like getting new people to the point where they feel like they can play with it is really huge. And until you know what, like you're saying, what the powers you have or like the impact that you're making and how to control it, like how to be a part of it, it can be really intimidating for people that are new. And I think especially for people that are like experts in their fields, but are realizing that they are new to this art form, or like new to this thing, and like feeling very capable in one place and less capable in another can really put people off. I've noticed that a lot because and I also feel that a lot, you know, like I know that feeling for sure.
I often like that for that sort of situation. And I've done that a lot with ballet dancers or actors, and you get them in early in the process. And I make a big point of I'm probably developing the puppets. So I have like these rehearsal puppets or these kind of crash test dummy puppets. And I will deliberately totally mistreat them in front of people so that they are not so scared of it being so precious. I'll like drop them, I'll throw them. I'll totally be really rough with the puppets. And that gives them permission, so they're not so scared about it. And then later I bring them the nice puppet. I'm like, now don't break this puppet.
This
But you
one
have
costs
to,
more
but
than
it's
my
a
house.
really important step of getting them to be comfortable and not to be afraid of the form, because in fact, they're all, if you make, especially if you choose a technique that's intuitive, where they're using their hands like they used to play with their action figures when they were kids, then everybody's actually a great puppeteer.
Yeah.
You know, everybody has it in them, and you just, and mostly what you do is you have to be really encouraging all the time. You just be really encouraging and say how great it is, you know? and then you give them little pointers, but you have to encourage them.
Yeah.
But I like working with puppeteers. I
Yeah.
like working with great puppeteers like you, who are great puppeteers, who are like going above and beyond what you can ask them to do. They like figure it out. They like, you know, they have suggestions on how to make it work. I mean, ultimately, people always have some sort of thing, like no matter who, they'll be like, if my grip was a little better, and you're like, great, let's do that. Let's make it, personalize it for you. But working with puppeteers is the best. It's the best. It's the best. It's the best because of what their availability to do all the being game for anything. Very few puppeteers, in fact, have experience working underwater puppets necessarily, but they're game. They're ready. And they have a different, they're in service to something as a performer, and they're not about their ego as much.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say that's really true. Yeah. I tend to brag about how that's kind of built into the art form in a lot of ways, and that your day-to-day is about collaborative play, and it's about making your performance like drawing the audience's attention to something outside your own body. And that really has an impact on how we collaborate with people, which I think is really excellent.
Like I'm really curious. Like in the opera I just did, because there was a group of puppeteers, and there were 8 puppeteers, and they were French puppeteers. They had all mostly been at the school that I went to in France, and so I didn't know them, but I knew they're basically what they would be capable of in the spirit that they came from. And they were all, of course, like they were intimidated by the environment, by the opera, and by the music and the singer.
There we go.
And the Red and Gold Theater and everything, but they very quickly became so essential to the entire, like the cohesion of the piece. They were, they knew there was a catwalk, and they knew how to get there, and they knew where the wings were, and they knew where the space was, and they knew how because also the singers and the chorus had to puppeteer sometimes, and they were attached. They were actually like attached to the singers to kind of help create. Some of the singers had a sort of like puppetized costume, and so the puppeteers were with them. They were with the singers. They were in the wings. They were like, they made, they were like young and nervous, but they were puppeteers, and so they were everywhere at once and all seeing and knowing. And the thing that it took them a while to get is they weren't musicians like everyone else was a musician on the opera, so it took them a while to know the music. And then once they did, they were way ahead of everybody else, because they knew like the environment, the physicality of everything. They knew the singers, the way it worked in the wings. They had this amazing cohesion, and they were like, you could just say what you needed, and puppeteers would do it. They would just like do it.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else, you needed to tell them what to do, and puppeteers have just this different way that's awesome. Even when it's not like typically puppetry, they're like at service. They're like, they're like these stagehand ninjas with finesse who actually are there and not there, and backstage and on stage and under the stage and above the stage. And I love puppeteers.
I think stagehand ninjas with finesse is a great band name. That's like one of my favorite descriptions of puppeteers so far. That's amazing.
We just got a call from my IATSE.
Yeah.
To give up that name, but
I'm curious about the other folks that you sort of represent puppetry to, because there aren't a whole lot of names that are associated with puppetry, and yours is one of them. And so you get
a very memorable name, and
it's true. You got a great brand going for you right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's also your work is extremely notable, and like that gets you to bring puppetry to people, like you said, that aren't experienced with puppetry, including producers and directors and choreographers and other things like that. How do you what's your approach with that, with the directors and producers who are new to puppetry? How do you get them into that place where they understand like what the impact of the puppetry is, or what they can do with it?
Oh, I don't know. It's so different. Every project is totally different. I mean, if you're coming in, if you're coming into a world as a puppeteer, as a sort of like outsider, you're like this weird foreign exchange student who's visiting the world of Broadway or ballet, or as I say, you have to keep it simple, and you have to keep it fun. It's just important to that. And there's moments when you can finesse it so that the magic really blows everybody away. But I think that's part of the overall, that's one of the advantages. This, people, we a lot of times, puppeteers, we will moan about how we're not, everyone thinks it's just for kids, or that people don't understand, or it's like this sort of, it is this weirdly marginalized art form, because at the same time, when I started working in the, late 80s, people are like, oh, it's a puppetry renaissance, and people are always saying that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's a party.
Well, electricity came back on. So people are always saying, oh, it's a new puppet. It's new. It's this new. It's a renaissance.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're always like, and then it like disappears for every Avenue Q or Warhorse or Lion King. People are still like, I had no idea the puppets could be so wonderful. Yeah. And it's actually kind of great, because you're always coming in as an underdog and as a surprise. People are always surprised and delighted.
Yeah.
I don't know why they can't figure it out. The puppets are so awesome. Somehow it actually really serves the art, because you always come in that people are like, wow.
That's a great, you're right. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to be.
Yeah. You're always the extra plus. It's always the something special. It's the, it adds, it makes, it puts, if someone is like, if someone is curating a festival, a performing arts festival, and they've got dance and they've got theater and stuff, if they put puppetry in, it's technicolor. Their programming, suddenly they're so, wow, it's so expansive what they're looking at, and it's so I don't know. I think it's almost funny how often puppetry just keeps going back to the margins, so that it can like pop out and surprise people.
I don't think I can think of another medium that is always simultaneously in a renaissance and in a decline at the same time. Always, it's like it's always coming back, and it's always a dying art form.
Right. Yes.
Um,
And it's one of the magic things of puppetry that actually it's like a special quality to it. It's the
Yeah.
it's this trickster art form.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's also like people love being in on the trick. Like people want to be like, people want that surprise, which is really fun, you know? I always like, I have nothing against magicians either, but I also feel like puppetry is a magic trick where the audience member is in on the trick, where like they're creating the magic with you. And so it's a totally different kind of magic. It's much more like inclusive and participatory, which I think is really fun.
But magicians, I know a lot of magicians and puppeteers are very similar. Very in, and when I've been involved in big productions where there's a magician or an illusionist, and then I'm doing puppetry, and we're like the this is like a tragic metaphor, but we're like the canary in the coal mine when it's not going to work. Like when something is like the whole is not supporting things. Magicians need that, and illusionists need that same sort of like, it's the fine details. It's the people understanding the things that you can't see. It's the setup. It's the finesse of something. It's how it's, I don't know. Magicians are also, I because like at the Dream Music Puppetry program, we do a lot of presenting of like, we do the puppet parlors and we have puppeteers we present, and there's also that same like obsessive total control freak thing where people be like, oh no, I work my sound with my foot pedal, and you're like, no, we have a guy who can and you don't have to do it with your foot. But they're like, no, I do everything with my, I touch my butt and I can make the lights go on. And we have, sometimes you have to shake people out of that. And I think magicians are.
Yeah, they have similar thing. Oh no, did you freeze again?
He was shaking his lights.
Yeah, he clenched his butt a little bit, and it froze the video. I do that all the time.
We have to tell him we can control that for him. He doesn't need to do that. So.
Zoot.
Okay, there you go. Now you're coming back. There. Can you hear me now? No, you can't hear me. You are there, but you can't hear me. Okay, great.
I can hear you.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We're back.
Sorry.
I think the last thing that I'm so curious about is, basically about work-life balance. It's as a puppeteer, like
look at his face.
I know it's that's the dumb way of asking it, but like you've created a career out of your passion, and that I think the double-edged sword with that is that it can easily take over your life, and that your passion then becomes work that you resent, and it makes your work less good if you are like not able to make space for it. And I'm curious about like how you make space for your work so that it can be, it's, there's a lot more that goes into being a puppeteer than just designing and performing, or like these cool, these cool puppets. I'm curious like how you make that space for your work to be as good as it can be.
Oh, I don't know. I spend way more time on my computer than I think is, like, I'm like, oh, I was working all day on my computer, writing emails and communicating with people. And so, when I'm actually like, people, I've been really lucky that people reach out to me and say, oh, I want to intern for you. And I'm like, great, come, you need help. And they come to my studio. What they want is they want to build puppets. And I'm actually like, I'm not building puppets until like for 6 months. But there's a lot to do here.
Yeah.
and I don't know. I just, I know that I'm blessed that I've had, I try and have fun, and I don't have kids. So I'm not like tied down. I go different places and do different projects, and I work in different, and, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
And sometimes I work too much, and sometimes there's no work at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the answer.
Well, I think it's comforting at least to know that's something that we all struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
and that trying to find that balance is like, that can be a commonality between us all. Is like, no matter where you're at in your puppetry career, like from people just starting out to you've been at it for a while, like finding the space for that really, it takes some thinking, and is part of the work as well. I think you're also frozen again, which is also really fun. Yeah.
He's intently listening.
Yeah, it's really nice. You freeze your video in the nicest positions. There we go. Great. Now we're coming back.
Okay.
Well, I've had a great time talking with you, Basil. I'm so glad that you came to chat with me on the show. It's been so lovely having you here.
I could talk to you for like 5 more hours.
I know. You should stick around on the call after I say goodbye, and we'll chat a little bit. We'll chat a bit longer after that, and just catch up a little bit. But it's so nice hearing from you. It's so nice hearing your thoughts on puppetry and the biz. And we'll hope to catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Eric.
Talk to you soon.
Katie. Bye.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, everyone. Thanks again to Basil Twist for joining us. Another Puppet Time Online in the bag.
Woohoo!
Join us again next week. We're on live Wednesdays at 2:00 every week. We'll have another great guest. It's right in the middle of the week. We're also, like, all of our past episodes are available on our YouTube channel, so check that out. We started this show on Instagram Live, so we're still on Instagram all the time. Subscribe to us at The Puppet Kitchen. And now, we have a Patreon page that you can join to help support this show and help bring on more guests, help ask great questions for our guests, and there's also some sweet Puppet Kitchen swag that you can be a part of. So go to patreon.com/puppetkitchen and help support what we're doing. And I want to give another big shout out. You can check out more work of Basil's at basiltwist.com. You can check out the opera that he was just a part of at medici.tv. It's beautiful. I just watched it. It's absolutely gorgeous, like every good opera should. It's completely over the top and beautiful. And what I love is that you can see a lot of Basil's earlier work reflected in little elements. Like there's a little Arias with a twist. There's a little bit of La Bella Dormente in there. There's a little bit of Symphonie Fantastique in there. Like, it really is nice to see his style kind of permeate that show. And I guess until then, Katie, do you have anything else you wanted to?
You got it all.
Well, thank you again for joining us. And until next time, just remember, you don't have to do everything to do something. We'll see you next time.